It's story time.
Hi there, welcome to story time. I was attempting to turn down some of the noises in my space. The air conditioning unit is working really hard today here in Maryland. It's a hot one. It's a hot one with even some caution of severe, I guess it would call poor air quality for outdoor activities. So here I am in the studio, and I'm grateful to share this time in the space with you. I want to start with just a few words of a poem, because today's story time is essentially the story of meditation, not just in terms of one individual's story, but in terms of our human story and this intimate relationship that unfolds within the practice of meditation. So let me share these words. This comes from author John Barrows, and it's entitled The Inward Journey. Walking the mandala of the mind, the inward spiral, the shadowed depths, each step closer to the darkness's center is a step closer to the lightened edge. The inward journey. When I was first formally introduced to the practice of meditation, it was after decades of learning various ways in which to connect with energy and spirit, both from my Catholic upbringing and from my movement disciplined practice of dancing. And it was particularly in these contexts, not so much in performance for me as in practice. Ironic, right? That even as I was dancing, both in spiritual worship and in independent practice and in competitive competitions with groups, right? My experience with meditation was about reaching that kind of altered state of being at ease with what is. Now, what we know today is that every human population has a story, has a relationship with some variation of the meditation discipline, be it contemplation or prayer or the more modern adaptation interpretation called mindfulness. Meditation is this experience of being with what is. Now, we can choose to direct that energy to the tangible, right, in the body or the mind, or we can direct that energy to a softer, a more broad awareness. Either way, it's about choosing how we show up in a posture that is sustainable, we'll come back to that, long enough so that inspiration, so that prana, so that the divine energy can meet us in that tender space of being calm and abiding and being grounded and stable, and yet safe enough to open to what we do not yet know. So there's this tug of war that happens in the sense that if we go in anticipating and expecting a certain result, like anything in life, meditation often disappoints. It fails to produce the outcome that we want. But there's no question that meditation is being diagnosed as, not diagnosed, it's being prescribed to care for so many different variations of modern illness, sickness, dis-ease, and disease. Is that meditation, by uniting the body, the mind, and the breath in a shared task of being in this moment, we really can befriend what is, even if what isn't our favorite, even if what is embracing our own dis-ease, our own illnesses, our own shortcomings. There's no greater practice than meditation that has helped me to facilitate a clearer and deeper understanding of what it means to be me. And in that, what it means to be free. So the story of meditation that I want to share with you is kind of twofold. And that is the first time that I was guided to do a moving meditation. Now, keep in mind, it wasn't until after I was introduced to this formal structure of guided moving meditation that I realized that so much of my early years as a dancer, particularly the practicing dancer, that I was doing moving meditation. But essentially, moving meditation is just about moving our body in a way that stays open and supple to receive what's present in the moment. So in this practice, which perhaps might be new to you, it is simply a walking meditation. And we walk at the pace at which our mind can stay in contact with the sensations of the body. And then we add on a little holding, a little extra support by putting 3 words that the mind will repeat verbally out loud or silently inside our own space of lift, move, and place. Now, this practice is obviously not difficult. And in a modern world where we're juggling so many things, I've got my phone, I've got my tablet, I've got my computer, I've got clocks, I've got speakers, I've got the fan behind me and the air unit, all of these energies that are asking for my attention. And if I don't learn to focus and choose, I can be overwhelmed and distracted. So the meditation practice is part about relearning, which is really a remembering how to choose and how to focus, so that when we need to focus, that skill is there for us. But it's also equally about learning how to let go of that linear cognitive focus and broaden into a bit more of awareness. This is where I find I can meet the witness perspective. But that's a topic for another time. So, breathe, move, rest is the mantra that I use in my practice here at Life's Work Yoga, because it is a discipline of recognizing the simplest things, just like lift, move, and place. Breathe, move, and rest simplifies it down so that we can kind of hold that mantra. But when I was introduced to this lift, move, and place, I was at a very different place in my practice and in my life. I was very driven. I was teaching about 26 classes of yoga, 26 practices for public and for individuals every single week. There was very little time for my own digestion and integration. And yet I had already cultivated a habit of daily practice. Some days much more restorative, other days much more intense. But it wasn't until I embraced this daily practice of meditation and released the drive that I really started to cultivate the benefits of lift, move, place, of breathe, move, rest. Now, when I did this practice, this lift, move, place practice on my own, independent of my teacher who was guiding me, somewhere in the process of walking a mandala, that's a maze or a circle, right? A mandala is a circle, and a maze is where we kind of integrate a circle of walking pattern with some sort of back and forth maze. You go in, you meet the center, and then you travel back out. Well, somewhere between meeting that center, meeting myself, just as this poem says that you step into the darkness's center. Now, I was in an outside mandala and it was in the middle of the day, but this is a metaphor for going deeper into our own truth, into our own story, is that sometimes we've turned the lights off if we shut the doors because that part is no longer welcome in our consciousness. Maybe because of fear, maybe because we don't want to remember that. For whatever reason, that darkness is in fact the fuel, the fertilizer, you might say, for the light that comes as we re-enter the world. Because meditation is not meant to be a permanent escape. It is meant to equip us to return to life better than when we went into meditation. Hence, the practice is about showing up. So as I'm walking out of this mandala and my mantra of lift, move, and place somehow shifts unintentionally and it becomes let more play. Well, when I realized what the words had conformed into, I was first aghast, like, How did I let go of my focus long enough to let this shift happen? How did I lose the purpose of the practice? And that lasted for about a half a breath. Because then as I exhaled and realized that maybe, just maybe, this evolution of my mantra as I was walking through the mandala, doing the practice of meditation in motion, divine met me. Prana met me and encouraged me to reconsider this linear fashion. And perhaps I took this as an invitation to practice more play, to practice the discipline of freedom, of finding ways in which to be my full, true self. Now, that was about 8 years ago. And now, as a yoga studio owner, I teach a handful of classes every week and work one-on-one with folks to cultivate their practice of mindfully living in community, in relationship. And because of that, I now know that this breathe, move, rest practice started with lift, move, and place. In fact, the yogis teach a practice called neti neti, not this, not this. Is that when we start our practice of culling what matters most to us, getting clear about what's important, it often begins with recognizing what we don't want. Not this, neti, neti. But once that clutter is shifted away, out of our attention, out of our view, what's left may take some time to reveal itself. Maybe we haven't invited those positive things into our energy. And this is why the positive intention, the mantra, the affirmation can be such a valuable tool within our meditation practice. Now, when I was recovering, and I happened to live pretty hard and fast in my younger years, in which case recovery was kind of a cyclical thing. About every 2 or 3 years, I'd have a devastating injury or accident that would ultimately land me in the hospital or on extended bed rest. Well, most recently, that was an emergency surgery, but it was in both my bicycle accident that led me to yoga in the first place and the recovery after multiple abdominal surgeries that helped me to solidify my relationship, the story that I was telling myself about meditation. See, I was so dependent on that move component of my practice of meditation that I didn't know how to meditate when I didn't have the moving capability. In other words, when I was bedridden, I didn't even hardly know how to breathe. But breathing is the entryway into the deeper mind practices of turning in, pratyahara, dharana, focus, dhyana, that flow state, and ultimately samadhi or bliss state, where we're open to the intervention of inspiration, of prana. Now, these are the 4 limbs, the higher 4 limbs of Patanjali's 8 limbs from the Yoga Sutras. But in that time, I had a foundation of practice with yoga. I had even a foundation of asana, pranayama, and some dabbling in meditation. But so much of my confidence in my meditation practice was linked to the competence that I felt in my body. So when I realized that I didn't have meditation as a standalone practice, but more importantly, that meditation was still scary to me, because in the silence that was necessary for my brain to recover from the brain injury, and in the silence of being alone when I was recovering from surgeries, I realized that the space inside my head, the thoughts, and my heart, the emotions, would fall prey to my fears more quickly than I realized. And the way that I often kept that fear at bay was to stay busy, hence 26 classes a week. So when I slowed down, not only was I able to see what I was avoiding, the darkness, but it helped me to then find the courage to be with it long enough to see the cracks in the myths that was holding my world together. Let me give you an example. A teacher friend of mine just said, "Ah, I found that I'm attached to how many students show up for my class. I'm using that as a way of validating my practice as a teacher, my service, my offering." And that is a trap when we create these outside measurements for our inward validation, this external locus of control. So after my accident, I really dived into the visualization components so that I could see myself move in my mind's eye. And that was the doorway to then link me into just meditation, just being with the stories that I was telling myself, the stories that I wasn't allowing myself to tell myself or to share with those like you on this path. See, in so many ways, expectation has dampened my vulnerability, my willingness to be vulnerable. In the sense that performance, yes, I was a dancer for 20 some odd years. Performance is a glimpse, but without the practice, without the showing up, without the heartache and the injuries and the trial and toil, performance will always be flat. Now, today I don't perform anymore. And yet that temptation, that learned habit of being on to perform, to offer what is wanted as opposed to what I have to share. This is part of the meditation practice. This is at the heart of yoga. And in fact, in its foundation, the asanas were strictly those postures that were meant to help create the space, the grounded space that would allow for meditation by way of the breath. So I'd love to hear more about your story with mindfulness, with meditation, with contemplation, with prayer. To me, it's all yoga, and to get comfortable in that practice requires practice. It's a practice of being with, pulling back the layers, seeing more clearly, and connecting more authentically. It really is all yoga. Thanks so much for sharing these minutes with me. I hope that these stories inspire you to not only share your story, but to get clear about what story matters, what story is depicting your becoming and helping you to take that next step into being your best, most fullest, vibrant self. For me, that is the practice of yoga. And if it's something that you'd like to explore, then reach out. Be willing to accept what you don't know and ask to learn something new. Whether it's a philosophy, a practice, or just a new way of understanding how to be in the world. This is the svadhyaya, the study that yoga encourages. So I welcome you. If I can be of support for your self-study, your practice of living, that's my life's work. Thank you for letting me share these stories and for sharing this time. Be well. Namaste.